Welcome to the Barber Hub podcast. I'm your host, Rick Hernandez, joined by a very special guest today. We got Angel Enriquez, a.k.a. Bow Tie the Barber, the founder and owner of the Vault Barber Shop in Ontario, California, downtown Ontario, right by the world-famous Logan's Candy. How's it going, Angel?
Great, man. How are you?
Good. Good to finally get to sit down with you.
Yeah. We've known each other for a while now.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Never had a full sit-down conversation.
Right.
So.
Got my hair cut by Angel. Extraordinary experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what's going on with you?
Not much, man. Just staying busy, trying to get after it, steady right now at the shop.
It's
blessed,
good.
Fortunately, it's been a lot of hard work these past 10 years plus, just trying to build my clientele to get it to a sustainable point where it's just steady and I don't have to worry about it. So pretty fortunate to say that it's at that point now where it's pretty consistent.
Nice. Yeah, I've always been amazed. I always check out your Yelp page, like perfect 5 stars. I'm like, that's unbelievable. And I know part of that is because you have a tight ship. It's Angel right now. It's pretty much one-man show right now, but he has complete control of his shop. I mean, it's an amazing experience. Every time you go in there, it's 100%. And I get why you're there, by yourself. It's hard to find someone who's gonna not damage
the reputation.
That's something so valuable.
Yeah.
There's a proverb that says a good name, aka reputation, is more valuable than rubies and gold or whatever. I can't remember how it goes exactly, but it's precious. There's nothing more valuable than your reputation, and this man definitely has the reputation down.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and I mean it's something that you really got to take care of, especially as a shop owner, because you might have barbers that come in and out of your shop, and at the end of the day, if they're not on the same page and understanding the vision that you have for your business, they wind up ruining your reputation. At the end of the day, they could just pick up and move on and go to a different barbershop. Meanwhile, at you as an owner, that reputation sticks with you.
Yeah. One of the things I admire that I watched you do, I remember watching you two for years. I think I tried to recruit you at one point.
When I was in barbering school?
Yeah, way back when. I was like, you know what? You'd be a good fit. And you're like, nah, man, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm like, I respect that.
Yeah,
I respect that. And I just kept watching you. And one of the things I admired about you is I saw you got it. You understood, you had a vision, and you began to build a brand identity right away in the shop you worked at. And I was like, he gets it. He's got his own Yelp page already. He's got things going. Back then I was a latecomer to Instagram and stuff like that, so I didn't know how all that was going. But I saw Yelp and Google was like, oh yeah, he's got it.
Yeah. I understood the importance of really putting your brand out there, and it just helps be easier to recognize that way when people do come across your logo or they hear your name.
Yeah,
there's a reputation behind it.
Another great thing you do, and I've done it too, not to the same degree as you. But you really have, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't like to say the word gimmick, but like you have a persona, you are the mascot. Like, like you have an image that is. So there was a barber, I'll tell you this story. There was a barber, Carlo, back in the day. He was like, I don't know if he was the founder, but one of the owners of the Upland Barbershop, which has supposedly been around for like 100 years. And he always wore a little red vest everywhere. He wore that to work. It was his signature look. And everybody recognized him, knew. I mean, your Instagram handle and your nickname was always Bow Tie the Barber. And you used to always wear a bow tie. You got this signature handlebar mustache, this certain iconic look that when people see you, they think traditional barber. Boom. And like, do you go everywhere like that? Like,
no. And to be honest with you, nowadays I don't really wear the bow tie as often as I used to. But,
all right.
I do bust it out from time to time, especially if I'm going out to an event where I am dressed up. I'll always throw
jump
on
in character. You hear about those fighters that like they got this persona. I just heard an interview about Conor McGregor recently, and somebody was like, he always knows when the camera's on, and he's not really that person he portrays. He's actually a really nice person, but when the camera's on, he's got this character that he goes into, and I think. I think we all do that to some degree, and I think you've done a good job at owning that and like like owning it and taking command of that and saying like, look, this is Bow Tie the Barber.
Yeah.
And it's great. It works.
Yeah, no, it worked out really well. I remember back when I initially started doing it, I was just doing a lot of research just on the history of barbering, and I saw the images of the barbers and how they dressed and how they worked and what they wore to work, and I really liked the fact that they seemed to take it more serious just based on how they presented themselves, and they'd be in slacks and button ups and ties, and they'd be completely dressed to the nines, and I really liked that angle. And so in doing my research and coming across a lot of that, I wanted to emulate that in the way that I presented myself as a barber.
Nice.
And it was completely different to the environment that I was in because nobody was really doing that.
Right, exactly.
And being the younger guy in the shop too, being new, still being in school, not being licensed.
Yeah, you had to stand out.
I really had to stand out, and I had to create a solid reputation for myself. And so that's one of the things that I decided to do. I decided to start going in and wearing a bow tie every day. And initially it was a little uncomfortable because up to that point I had never worn a bow tie before. So it was a little uncomfortable. I felt like I looked a little goofy at the time, you know what I mean? Just because it was something that was completely new. And, I was in that shop that I was working at, I was located at the very back of the shop, which I was okay with. I wasn't very social, very sociable at the time. I was really, really shy, really quiet.
Really, I would have never known.
Yeah, I was an introvert, and through barbering, it actually helped me come out of my shell. It helped me understand how to go about having conversations and how to continue those conversations going. And so being a barber really brought me out of my shell because I understood that in order for me to be able to build the clientele, I needed to make sure that the people that sat in my chair, I was able to relate with them and I was able to make them feel comfortable while they sat in my chair. Yeah. And so in that process, it forced me to come out and be more social, Yeah,
I've seen the shop be such a platform for people to learn social skills. I have a great friend of mine. He grew up homeschooled and kind of lived out in the sticks, and he came to me and needed a job. I'm like, I could teach you to be a barber. And he's a hard worker. I mean, he's like old school, hardworking grit, but he had very little social awareness. I think he had the aptitude. He just didn't have the awareness of what's going on in California. But over the years, it was amazing to watch him blossom as being one of the best people I know now with interacting with people. And it's great.
Yeah, it definitely works.
Yeah,
it's a line of work where you absolutely have to talk to people.
Yeah, and it's a great education too. I tell people the barbershop's like the internet before the internet was around. You could learn anything behind the chair of a barbershop.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about being a barber. I enjoy learning.
Yeah,
all the stuff that I brought for you today. It's all through my curiosity that when I'm curious about something, and sometimes I'll become obsessive about it until I learn everything about it.
Yeah.
And so, that's one of my projects that I had been working on.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to learn as many things as possible. And I've come to realize that at the end of the day, they all end up merging together, and everything just kind of seems to flow seamlessly when you do it the right way and you go out there with the intention of just expanding your mind as much as possible.
Yeah.
At the time, it might not seem like it'll connect or cross over into the other things that you're doing, but given the time, it all comes back around.
Yeah, you're laying a good foundation. Yeah, Angel's a man of many talents. I remember talking to you the other day. I was like, you're a real entrepreneur barber. He starts showing me all this stuff. He's like, yeah, I printed those. I started learning how to print. And he's like, hey, you want me to make that file a vector file for you? I'm like, you know how to do that? He's like, yeah, I taught myself how to do all that. He's like, I needed it, so I went and learned how to do it. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great mentality to have.
Yeah, and it just makes it easier that way. Whenever you have a creative idea that comes to mind, you don't have to wait for anyone else to do it for you. You're able to just put it together yourself if you know how to do it. And fortunately, I've had friends that that have shown me and taught me things as well along the way. Whenever I've run into any issues, they've always been more than helpful, in pointing me in the right direction.
Yeah.
But it's fun for me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I enjoy learning. I enjoy the challenge of diving into something different.
Yeah, and then one of the advantages, if you need somebody, ask a barber. I guarantee you, he knows somebody who does what you need done.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely true.
Nice. So you've had barbers in the past, right?
Yeah,
like working
correct.
there. Like, how's that worked out? Like, what challenges have you faced with that?
So when I initially opened up, I operated with 2 other barbers at the time. So it was a shop of 3. And initially, I opened up and I really didn't know much about how to approach it, just because all I knew was stuff that I've came across on the internet, or the way that the previous shop that I worked at, the way that they operated. And so, for me, I just try to pay attention to see the approach that people would take and what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And at the end of the day, the things that I wanted to incorporate in my shop and the style of business I was operating. And so I just kind of pieced together, from my experiences, just through research. And initially it was a little rough because I was still kind of gathering, essentially what I wanted.
Right.
I wasn't exactly sure, so I was still figuring that out at the beginning, but I knew that I wanted to do it. So I jumped in there and I was trying to figure it out. But at the beginning, we operated booth rent. I had 2 other guys working with me. Both of them I knew from, years prior. One I worked with at the shop previous to me opening, and the other guy I actually knew him from like elementary school.
Oh, nice.
And he eventually was enrolled in barbering school at the same time that I was. So we reconnected at that point, and so we operated like that for a while. Initially, it was me and one other guy, and at the beginning, just the flow of traffic was really well. And so that allowed him to start picking up customers as they were coming in. My schedule would be completely booked up more often than not. Right. So he would receive a lot of the overflow and a lot of the new traffic that would come in. And I didn't want to bring any other barbers in until he guaranteed his chair that he was busy all the time. Right. And I figured as long as...
Just to segue real quick, I want to touch on something. Now, is that the same approach you took when you knew it was time for you to start your own shop? Like, was there a point, like, business-wise, okay, now I can do it?
Sorry,
like, clientele-wise, like you said, you didn't want to hire another barber till you knew he was busy.
Yeah.
Is that how you approached starting your shop, too? Like, you wanted to make sure?
Yeah, so when I was working in a shop prior, I made myself as available as possible. So there was years where I was working, 12 to 14 to 16-hour days. Mm-hmm. And, the mentality that I went into it with was I want to be one of the first ones in the shop and then one of the last ones to leave as well. And so I figured if I was consistent with my approach on just being available, because
and how many years did you do that in the shop?
I worked in the previous shop for about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And so for a good amount of it, I was just sacrificing. I didn't have a social life. I didn't, it was very rare that I would go out. I would get invited, to things all the time, but I would turn them down because I knew I had work the next day, or I knew that I'd be at work late. And it was just a sacrifice that I understood. It was just going to be a part of the process.
Right.
And so, I made myself available as much as possible. And I figured eventually it's going to get to the point where if I can stay consistently busy with my schedule completely open, eventually when I get to that point where I'm just busy with a really, really booked schedule, eventually I'll taper that down and I'll create a more realistic schedule for me to be able to maintain
and be busy
and be consistent. And now that clientele will have to taper into the smaller schedule, and that'll keep me consistently busy week after week. And so I took that approach, and it worked. I love
it. Yeah. I took the same kind of approach, and I would try to tell barbers, like, when you first start, you need to have your arms wide open. And once you have something in there, then you can condense it, and people will get in where they fit in. Once they like what you serve, they're going to come to you. They're going to fit in your schedule once you prove yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's definitely been a fact since I've started.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. So you did that. So you're back to your shop now. You got one barber. And you're like, I got to make sure he's solid first.
Yeah. So eventually he, he started becoming booked up as well. And so as I started seeing him turn customers away at that point, then I knew that it was time for me to bring another barber in. And so at that point, I knew the overflow that I was creating along with the overflow that he was creating and all the new customers that were coming in seeking services. But we didn't have the third guy at the time. We were starting to turn a lot of people away. And so at that point, it was just organic, when it's time to expand, it'll show itself,
Right.
And so eventually brought the third guy in and kind of did the same thing all over again. That's where the challenge kind of came in a little bit because the consistency and schedule and, just putting in the work, it wasn't as consistent as I would have preferred it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it kind of posed a challenge because the flow kind of stopped at that point, and then I realized I need to figure out a different way to approach it because now I have this issue where this barber isn't as busy as he could be. And, his schedule's not as consistent all the time. And so it's going to make it hard for him to build a clientele if he's not consistent with the schedule. And so, I figured if I bring an additional barber in, it might motivate him because now he's having to split that traffic with another barber. And that might put a fire under his ass because he's got bills that he's got to take care of too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you want to pick up these customers, you got to make sure that you're available. And so I ended up taking that approach and, it seemed to work, but in transitioning to that third barber, I exited that room and I had already expanded into the room next door. And so we were separated by a wall.
Is that the same building you're in now?
Yeah, that's where I'm at now. So I ended up shutting down the initial room that I opened. And then I just stayed with the second room that I expanded into just because it had, a larger layout,
Better flow,
bigger windows, so
Yeah.
it just felt more comfortable on that side. So I decided to stay on that side. And so the challenge that came in was now with me not being in that room, who's going to run it? Even though I'm just footsteps away,
Right.
I'd be the one that would kind of control the energy in the room.
Yeah.
I'd be the one that would make sure that everybody's greeted. I'd make sure that the trash is taken out, that all the towels are put away, that the room is well put together. That if I see that a customer is sitting down and he's looking a little awkward or uncomfortable, I would pick up on those things and I'd go out of my way to try and make conversation. And so I felt like when I was in that room, I really tied the room together,
Right.
Just in being aware of what was going on and how
Yeah.
everybody was feeling, whether they were comfortable or not, or, if they were a new customer, I even if they weren't my client, I'd go out of my way to make conversation. Hey, where are you from?
Nice.
This and that. And so that allowed that flow in that room to just move effortlessly. And so once I moved into the second room, that's where it kind of got a little rocky because that part of it wasn't as consistent, And so little by little, I started hearing complaints from customers that were coming in. Sometimes I'd be too busy, so I wouldn't be able to cut their hair, and they'd sit with one of the other barbers. And I started getting complaints that they were just horsing around too much and just talking amongst themselves and not really paying attention or having their full attention on the client that's in the chair. And for me, I never really cared for that. For me, the way I see it is the person in my chair
Yeah.
that's paying for the service
Yeah.
deserves my undivided attention. If for whatever reason I need to stop what I'm doing to respond to a phone call, I'm going to ask if I can excuse myself, and I'll try and make it quick. But I understand that person is paying for this time
Exactly.
and the service. And so my attention has to be there.
Yeah, you understand that. One of the things I used to do, and I still do, and I do this because I've gone to you, like, as an owner, I always felt like I need to not lose touch with the customer service experience. So some of the advice I've given to other owners is, hey, you need to take field trips. Leave your shop,
Yeah.
get out of your barber disguise or whatever, and take your hard-earned money, go to a shop, and be a customer. Don't tell them you're a barber. Just go through their process. If they're late, sit there and endure it. See what it feels like.
Yeah.
If they, you know,
Yeah, no, I
go
agree.
through the experience so you can know what it feels like.
Yeah.
A lot of owners lose touch with what it feels. Some have never known. Like I know some that grew up in a shop, their dad was a barber. They've never been a real customer. And they get lazy on stuff. They don't know what it feels like when someone's
on the
running
other
late
side.
and you got somewhere to be, or when you tell somebody you want it low and they go high. You know, it's not good.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and sometimes it really opens up your mind, and it changes your perspective even of yourself by doing that. I remember I made an appointment at the time. You know, I wanted to experience what it would be like to get a haircut that cost $100.
All right.
So I book an appointment at a shop in LA, and I receive $100 haircut service. And to be honest with you, I was very disappointed, you know, because I went in there, the effort on the barber's end, it just wasn't there. You know, he was just trying to get me in and out. Didn't really make an effort to make conversation with you. And so it kind of made me feel a little weird because I was expecting something different for $100 service, you know,
So-
and
Speaking of pricing, back when you had barbers working for you and stuff, what were you charging back then?
when I first opened up, we were at 25.
Okay. And what was the average around then, more or
At
less?
that time, I think when I left the shop that I was at, it was between 15 and 20.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So when I opened up and I started charging 25, it was a little bit more than what
Yeah,
people
it was that you were in the
used to.
upper echelon at the time.
Yeah.
And so, little feedback, when I moved back to California and I went and checked you out, and I was like, hey, what's going on? How come you don't got no barbers here? And I was looking for a job kind of, and you're like, well, I can't keep barbers in here because of the price. And I'm thinking like, because you're too cheap and barbers like they want to make more money. And you're like, no, the price is too high. They're afraid to charge it. And I'm like, well, what do you charge? You're like, I charge $63. And at the time, that's the most I've heard of for a barbershop around here. And you know what it did to me? I'm like, I want to know what a $63 haircut is like.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't afford that all the time. You know, I got 6 children and a lot of other stuff going on. I'm like, I can't justify that. And I'm a barber. Like, you know, like obviously, you know, we get hooked up, but I wanted to experience it. I don't go there like, oh, I need a hand. Like, no, I want to go there. I want to pay for it. I want to experience it. And it was good. I'm like, you know what? If I had a little more dough, I would be here. Like, it was a great experience. I felt such a personal touch, you know, and all the things that I liked that we always did in our shop was the hot towel, you know, checking your work, making sure it's right, you know, letting the conversation flow naturally. It was great. It was a great experience. You know, you offered me a beverage. The atmosphere was real respectful.
Yeah.
And I always feel like that's what men want. It's universal. I don't care what flavor shop you have or style. The universal thing that men want is respect. I want to come in and I want to feel respected. Like you respected my time. You respected my request. You know, everything. And it was good. It was a good experience.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. And then the experience that I was telling you about with the $100 service, after receiving that kind of experience from that barbershop, it made me realize, like, why am I so intimidated about charging what I feel like I'm worth when this guy's out here charging this price and offering that kind of service? I know my service exceeds the experience that he was providing me at the time, you know, and he didn't really care to make a conversation until after I told him I was a barber. And he only made a conversation because he was trying to sell me on some classes. You know, so it was just very distasteful, you know? Yeah. And so that when I left there, it really opened up my mind and it made me realize, like,
if the class wasn't about how to charge $100, I wouldn't have been interested.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. So going back to that, tell me the story, because I know a lot of barbers, they're afraid to charge. And some barbers, I'll be honest, at $30, they're charging too much. They think, oh, well, that's what everyone's charging. Like, but you're not busy.
Yeah.
You're not that good, to be honest with you. Like, what value are you bringing? And I've seen barbers, oh, we got to raise the prices because we're slower. I'm like, no.
That's,
you raise the prices because you're busier. You're in demand. Supply and demand. Economics 101. Yeah. So if you don't mind, tell me a little story. Like, how do you go? So you were at 25. What are you at right now, by the way?
I'm at 63.
You're at 63 right now. Okay,
right
so
now.
Tell us a story. How did you get there? Because I know a lot of barbers are looking on, just like you when you went to the other shop. Like, how do I get there?
Absolutely. So initially we were at 25. Eventually, you know, I don't know if you recall when they were talking about the problem that was going on with independent contracting, when they had the issue with some truck drivers that were being treated as though they were employees, but they were.
This would have been like 2017, 2018, I think. I think I was living in Alaska at the time.
Okay.
And I remember hearing about it, and owners like were getting
Panicking
scared.
a
They were
little bit.
panicking, like,
Yeah.
oh, I got to make everybody a W-2 employee
Yeah,
now. They can't be
yeah.
independent contractors.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yeah, so during that time, you know, I wanted to be at the head of the curve, you know, because I saw that was going on, and I figured, well, if they're going to push us to W-2 the barbers, now I need to come up with a game plan to try and make it as fair as possible for the barber, to where he's still seeing a similar amount of money as what he was seeing prior, when he was on booth rent, you know, and we were charging 25, while still, you know, following the W-2, you know, rules and paying them, you know, accordingly, while still making sure that I was able to cover the cost of the employee taxes that I would have to pick up on my end, you know what I mean? And so it was a lot. It was a mess, and I did a lot of research. I probably didn't sleep for like a period of 3 months because I was so stressed out. You know, my sleep pattern was just completely off. And so I decided to go that route. You know, I did a ton of research on what I needed to do, how I needed to structure it. I put together maybe like a 64-page employee handbook, step by step, you know, on how to greet the customer, how the experience is supposed to be. Like, everything was just broken down, and it was on paper. You know, the process on you know, requesting time off and stuff like that. And so now, in shifting to the W-2 format, now there's more rules and it's more structured. And with a lot of the times that I've noticed with barbers, because they are independent contractors and they're used to having that freedom, they don't like
most of us
structure.
We became barbers for freedom. You know?
So that's where it became challenging, you know. But on my end, because of the research that I had done and the way that I was trying to structure it, I knew that we were going to increase prices. I knew that we were going to charge more. That was just the starting point, you know. And I also understood on my end that as much as it seems like they're being impacted in a negative way because now they're not making what they would make before on a day-to-day basis, where they see every dollar that they're making. Now they're having to wait to get a check, and then the check now is having 8% withheld from their check. So seeing that was completely different, and it was an adjustment. But for me, in my mind, I knew that this was just going to be the beginning.
So
eventually,
you
they were
actually
make more
went
money.
legit payroll.
Oh yeah. I went legit payroll, and it was a lot. It was a lot for the guys. It was a lot of changes, but like I said, I had a vision.
Yeah.
I had a vision, and I knew that was just the starting point. I just needed a couple guys that were just down to roll with me, and eventually we'd all be making more money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so as that came to be, you know, on my end, because now I am carrying so much more weight, my overhead is through the roof.
Yeah.
It got to the point where, like, because I'm trying to figure it out, I was paying myself out scraps, barely enough to pay my bills at home, just to make sure that I was taking care of them and making sure that they were going home with money, and that I was paying all my taxes the way that I needed to. So I was living tight for a while, you know, and I was willing to make the sacrifice because I knew this is just the beginning. This is part of the process, you know. And so having all that weight on me, I also understood that I needed to have the shop operating the way that I needed it to in order for this vision to play out. And so I started making changes in regards to requesting that they were a little bit more mindful with their attire coming into the shop. You know, prior to that, it was very loose.
See, that's an advantage I always thought about too. I was like, I remember actually right down the street here, they got the small business development, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And
that
you go there for business. Well, that's funded by the EDD.
Oh.
So they really try to push you into making them employees. So you're paying into EDD. And I'm like, no, they're independent contractors. He's like, well, then you can't tell them what to do. I'm like, I really want to tell them what to do because I have a vision. You know, I got a plan. Like, I want them to stick to this. So I started studying all the guidelines, the difference between an independent contractor versus an employee. And, you know, it's tough. And I was like, if I ever do this like the way I want to, I probably need to go like full scale. You're an employee. You're on payroll. Here's your uniform. Boom. Here's your schedule. Boom. You better be on time. But you know.
And it works for some people. Some people enjoy that structure.
Right.
Some people would rather have 8% withheld from their checks, as opposed to them having to worry on their own how they're going to set their money aside for taxes and how they're going to pay it, whether quarterly or at the end of the year, all in one lump sum. And so some people are okay with the structure. And I think it's just a matter of taking the time to develop it, the right way. If you want to do it that way, but just fine tuning everything and then looking for people that are willing to operate under that kind of format. Because at the end of the day, I saw the benefit in it on my end as an owner, because, on my end, I was picking up a portion of the taxes that they typically would have to pay on their own, because as an independent contractor, you're not only paying employment taxes, but you're also paying self-employment taxes.
And it's a huge advantage. I remember, because I was an honest barber too. I've always been a believer, you pay what you're supposed to pay. And I remember being an apprentice barber at my first shop, and I go to file my taxes. I'm like super young, no family, highest tax bracket, and I'm considered self-employed, which is a huge tax just for being self-employed. And I'm like, they're getting like a third of my money. And so I go talk to my boss. I'm like, hey, can you put me on payroll? Because technically in the apprenticeship program, legally, I was supposed to be on payroll. He's like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, whoa, this is not good. Like, I'm paying your portion that you're supposed to pay as an employer and mine. And I saw it. I understood, like, if I'm being legit, like, I would have loved to work for you at that time. If I knew you and the roles were reversed, I was a little younger than you, and I knew you were running a legit shop and paying my
portion,
half of my taxes for me, like, and you got a good setup. It's a little
more than half,
Yeah.
That's the thing that, in my situation, it was unfortunate that they didn't understand it, because I think that's what it came down to. They didn't understand the structure that I was trying to create, and it was different, Well,
let's be honest. Most, people, a lot of people in our industry, they're not really paying their taxes. When I first got into barbering, I looked up, the limited knowledge that was available about barbers back then. Like, how much do barbers make per year? It was like, according to the IRS, they make like $8,000 a year. And then somebody low me like, barbers don't pay their taxes. That's why. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I remember someone in barber school like, hey, you got to have 2 books, all right? You got to have one that shows your real numbers, then one you show Uncle Sam. I'm like, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder all the time. Like, I got a vision. I want to grow. You can't grow. And I learned back then, and that's how my shop was able to blow up, because I wasn't looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I knew a lot of shops are like, we're not really trying to expand. We don't want Uncle Sam to know we're here, really. That's why we're in the cut. And we have supplemental business too that we do to,
Yeah, on the side.
like
backdoor specials.
Yeah, you know how it was back in that's how, sadly, that's what most barbershops are known. If it wasn't a franchise
barbershop
or a stylist place like Supercuts or Great Clips, like that's where you go to get what you need.
Yeah, absolutely true.
And that's good. I didn't even know that about you. We should have been talking more back in the day. Like, we were both trying to do things legit.
Yeah, but it really does put it puts a cap over you.
It does.
It brings the ceiling lower for you when you try and cut these corners and you try and do business in a shady way. For that reason that you brought up, you're constantly having to look over your shoulder, and that's going to limit your growth.
Yeah.
I mean, it might cost a little bit more to do it legit. It might be a little bit more of a headache to set the process up. But at the end of the day, you only got to do it once. And then once it's done, you don't have a ceiling.
Yeah,
exactly. You can
that's how I saw it.
Expand as much as you want now. Now you're not limited because you're looking over your shoulder.
It's like, the shops that they don't take card. They're like, we can't take card because we don't report this stuff. I'm like, I was like, well, did you know that people spend 18% more on average when they could use their card?
Yeah.
I'm like, there's your stuff right there. I'm like, at one point I was going to go all card because I'm like, I pay all my taxes anyways. I'm not hiding anything. I'm like, I'll just let them put it right to my bank, and I don't even have to go to the bank. I hated going to the bank.
It makes it more efficient.
Yeah, and then
just easier
you get less, less people stealing stuff.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, the money went straight there, because I ran a commission shop where they.
Okay, so then the money funneled through you, and then
we had a software that it all funneled through, and it's just semantics. Essentially, they paid the shop so much, but we had a collective system where it all worked out. And
nice.
you definitely, it's a win-win situation because I added value though.
Yeah.
I made more money than most shop owners, but I added value. You came to work for me, I'm gonna make sure you're busy.
Yeah. And
You're not gonna be sitting there twiddling your thumbs and figuring out how to find clients. Most of the barbers that work for me, they don't know how to find clients. They never had to.
because you made it so easy.
Yeah, but and then after a while, some felt like, oh, I need to make more money. I'm like, okay, well, just remember, like I set you up.
Yeah.
None of them ever been to a shop where
They got set up like that.
like the worst thing is going to a shop that don't need you. My first shop, they hired me when they didn't need me, and that's why I like your approach. Like I gotta wait till this barber's busy first. And I've worked in a couple shops before where it's like
They don't give a damn.
they hired me, but they don't really have client. Like I'm on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, no wonder why the booth rent's so cheap,
Yeah.
because there's no other value. Like
Yeah.
you're just getting a chair.
Because if it's commission, now they're more pressured to assist you.
You
'cause
got
they
to
can make
perform.
more money.
Yeah,
You
it's
know
a
what I mean?
win-win. Like, hey, I'm connected to your success. You come work for me, like I'm gonna make sure you're successful. I'm gonna provide training. I'm gonna be marketing. I'm gonna, I'm gonna hype you up. I'm gonna be your number one hype man.
Yeah.
And so back to your story, like you did the whole employee thing.
Yeah, so I did that for a little while. And then as I started implementing some rules in order to have everything be a little bit more consistent, I wanted all of our customers' experience to be damn near the same. It didn't matter who they sat
Right.
with, just to keep everything consistent. And so in doing that, one of the changes that I was trying to make was uniform, and I didn't really care as much as like for the colors or anything like that. I just wanted them
Some
to
basics.
look like that they made an effort when they came in, because at the end of the day, we're in the business of making people look good.
Yeah,
And they come in and everyone's going to judge you on first impression,
that's right.
and they're going to look at you up
It's a
and down,
fact.
and whether they want to or not, it's just a natural thing. We're just wired that way.
Yeah.
And so if the first thing that they see is a barber that isn't well put together, doesn't look like he really cared when he got up in the morning, that's going to reflect the service that they're going to
Absolutely.
provide. And so the customer, in a split second, they're going to judge you.
Absolutely.
And having a barber do that in such a small shop, it's going to reflect on all of us, And so I wanted everything to be a little bit more tightened up,
Nice.
And it worked for a little bit, Me knowing that I couldn't legally tell them that they had to do it this way, it helped now having them as employees, because now that door opened up, right? So now I'm asking them to do it. At the same time, I'm trying to keep a good relationship
Yeah.
with them. So I'm not trying to make them feel uncomfortable.
Right. Make it unbearable.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find just middle ground. And so, that probably worked for about a week. And then little by little, one of them stopped doing it. And then another barber saw that he stopped doing it, so he stopped doing it. And it just put me in a bad spot, because it's like, well, in that kind of dynamic, it's either I find another solution, or, I got to do something with this first barber that initially influence the rest of them, and I got to have a conversation with them, And so I tried setting up meetings to get everybody on the same page, so everybody understood the importance of what I was trying to do, and kind of let them in on my vision a little bit more, and also let them in on what the finances were looking like as well,
Yeah.
because I wanted to run a shop that was transparent. I wanted them to know that if they had a question, or if they didn't agree with something that I was doing and it didn't make sense, bring it up to me. We'll have open dialogue. You don't understand
good.
something, let me help you understand it. But you got to ask the questions, because I can't answer questions into things that you don't understand if you don't ask them. And so whenever, I would try and have meetings, I'd always ask them if they had anything that they wanted to talk about. And I always preferred for the topics to come up. That way we wouldn't have to go back to the shop and they're still thinking that, oh, he's doing this because of that.
Right.
No,
Right.
just ask me.
So
I'll tell you
important.
why I'm doing it. And it'll make sense to you, because I'll be thorough with my explanation. I'll
Yeah.
make sure you understand. That way we're on the same page and we could avoid having this problem. And, so eventually the uniform didn't work out, right? So I eventually picked up barber jackets, all white barber jackets, and I got one for all of them, and I figured, all right, if you guys aren't going to wear the uniform, the button up or the slacks or the, just looking more presentable, at the very least, if you want to wear a t-shirt, wear the t-shirt, but throw this jacket over. That way, at the least, we all look like a team. It looks uniform in here. It's
Yeah, it
consistent
looks
when
like
they walk in.
like we did this on purpose. you
Yeah.
know?
And so that worked for the most part. And then, as time went on, I would catch that these guys would wear it when I was there. When I wasn't there, they wouldn't wear it. You know, and I had cameras, so it was a little disappointing. It almost felt disrespectful because they knew I had cameras, and, you know, so it was pretty clear that they were doing this where it's like, you know, if I wasn't there, they wouldn't wear it.
They don't get it.
Yeah, and it showed that they just didn't get the vision. They didn't understand.
That's
and so
right.
I kept trying to find a way to get back to level ground with them. And, you know, one of the last meetings that I tried putting together, that's where it kind of fell apart, and it became clear for me what I needed to do on my end. I organized a meeting maybe like 3 weeks prior to the actual date. I checked everyone's schedules, made sure they were all available. I was going to treat them out to dinner and drinks and stuff like that. I was going to cover everything, and I wanted to just have a conversation and just kind of put everything out there, get on the same page with all the barbers on my team. And so, you know, everybody was on board with it. And then on the day of, one of the barbers, you know, the original barber that initially started going the opposite direction, again, he went the opposite direction, and I saw that he wasn't breaking down the station, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know, we got a meeting after work. He's like, oh, well, I have a recurring appointment, and, you know, I got to take care of him.
Disrespectful.
And it's like, I scheduled this 3 weeks ago, you know what I mean?
Right.
And you told me then that you were available, and now all of a sudden it was a appointment that you already had scheduled, which wasn't in a schedule because I had access to the schedule, you know? And so, you know, I decided to proceed with the meeting with the other two guys. You know, he wanted to meet us afterwards, after he finished that appointment. I told him, I was like, dude, by that time it's going to be too late. The restaurant's going to be closing, you know, and I'm not going to repeat everything that I'm going over with them two all over again at the end. You know, if anything, I'll fill you in later, you know?
Yeah.
And so I left, you know, to reserve our table. The other two barbers were still cleaning up, and the time came for them to meet, and they didn't show up. And so I'm sitting there, you know, trying to be patient. And so eventually I got impatient after like 15, 20 minutes waiting. And so I checked the cameras, and all three of them were just sitting down, having a good old time, just chopping it up on the bench, just having conversation, you know. And at this point, by the time the first barber arrived, it was already maybe like 40 minutes to an hour, you know, and he hits me with, oh, sorry, I'm late. I had to go home and feed my dog. And I had to, you know, all these excuses. And I knew he was lying to me because I saw him chilling inside the shop on that bench, you know, and it was just
crazy
disrespect after disrespect and after disrespect. And so eventually, you know, I just realized, you know, this isn't how I want my business to be. I want to be happy in my business. I've made so many sacrifices in order for me to have this. And I'm not happy allowing somebody or having somebody in here doing what these guys are doing. You know, second guy rolls in, you know, even later, you know, and he's got all these excuses. Oh, I had to do this, I had to do that. And at that point, I lost my train of thought with what my whole meeting was about, because I was so flustered and angry.
Yeah,
and had my laptop
the direction
there.
just shifted.
It shifted, and a lot of it too was, you know, I needed the other barber to be there that wasn't going.
Yeah,
because a lot of it
so often the one who needs it the most is not the one who's going to not show up. Exactly.
And so, you know, after that meeting, everything just kind of clicked, and it made me realize that, you know, these guys just aren't on the same page. And so I ended up scheduling another meeting with them for the following week. And this time we're not going anywhere. Just come to the other room when you guys are done. I'll be over there waiting for you guys. I'll be done at this time. Just swing by and we'll have a conversation. And so at that point, I had already made it up in my mind that I was going to rip it off like a Band-Aid. Either you guys are on board with my vision and you guys want to help me grow this and you guys are on the same page, or you guys are going to go a different direction and you guys are going to go to a different shop, you know? And so I brought it up to them and let them know, because at the end of the day, I wanted to be happy, and I understand that they wanted to be happy as well. So I, you know, I let them know, I can tell that you guys aren't happy here just based on the way you guys are behaving and just how you guys are conducting yourself. It's showing me you're not happy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, in order for all of us to be successful, we all need to be happy. And you guys are showing me you're not. So if you aren't happy here and you feel like you'll be happy somewhere else, then maybe you should start looking for another location. If you are happy here and you want to continue helping me build this, then by all means, I need the help. So, you know, but it's going to be under the understanding that you are going to follow the rules and the
this
vision
is your
that
ship.
I have. You know, this is my ship.
Absolutely.
And so I ended up having that conversation, and I asked if they had anything that they wanted to talk about. And, you know, usually that's how it went, where I would bring that up and nobody would say anything. They'd talk amongst each other, but they wouldn't bring it up to me. And so, a month goes by and first barber drops. Another month goes by, second barber drops. And I'm thinking maybe the third one's going to stick around. All the overflow from the other two guys, because they're not going to take all their customers. Some of the customers are going to stay with the shop.
Right.
I figured the third guy would just pick up that overflow because I would be too busy to take on any new customers. But he ended up going as well. And later on, I ended up finding out that that initial barber that was kind of stirring things up a little bit, he ended up opening up down the street for me.
He had a planned mutiny.
And he took the other two guys
poisoning.
with him.
See, I'm Angel. First of all, I appreciate you opening up and sharing this. I feel like this is such valuable content.
Yeah.
And this is what I try to stress to people. This is why you have to nip it in the bud. And there's something like that. Like I've done both good and bad. And Mike, you're talking to.
Yeah.
We actually have a really good story because I fired him years ago. And we talk every week. Yeah. Like, we're so tight.
It was a blessing in disguise.
And I've worked for someone else like, hey, and he said to fire, you needed to fire them. And I'm like, hey, let me tell you something. You could fire someone and you'd be surprised. They might respect you more later. Yeah. Like 2 weeks later, Mike calls me up. Hey, Rick, how's it going? I just want you to know, no hard feelings. I'm like, hey, Mike, no hard feelings at all. And he tells me, the whole story, what he's doing. He's like, hey, I looked at you as a mentor. I've been around a lot of shops. I need advice from you because I like how you did it. I get it. You had a vision. I didn't fit your vision. I was not cooperating with the vision. You got rid of me. So I tell him, hey, come down to the shop. I say, hey, tell him, the man I was working for at the time, to tell him what you just told me. Because I just got done telling him, I promise you, they might respect you more later. Then I call Mike back, say, hey, Mike, come here. I got to tell you something. I never told you this before. I've told a lot of people this, Mike, but I had to fire you because I ruined you. I let somebody in the shop, and I let them stay for way too long, and they corrupted you because you were young in your career. You're still impressionable. You still, I'm the taskmaster. I'm putting down these rules and stuff, and he's like showing you, how bad I am, and he's messing up, and he's messing up the flow. Everyone else is happy, and you could have been happy, but it was my fault because I let him stay way too long. And I had to get rid of you, and then I had to get rid of him because I realized what was happening. Yeah. And it was my fault. And I learned later, and I'm hoping going forward I'll make a lot better decisions. But I learned a lot, and I know you have too. You learned a lot. Like, okay, I gotta
from the jump.
When you feel it's not right, there's an old adage: be slow to hire and fast to fire. Yeah. Because there's a you just know when you know you're just delaying the inevitable. Absolutely. And if you never dealt with it, it's hard. Yeah. I feel personally this is one of the biggest problems that holds back barbershops. They don't fire barbers that they need to fire.
Yeah, and then it winds up putting the power in the barber's hand, not so much the owner. To where now the barbers are teaming together against the owner.
And I guarantee you, they don't respect him like that because they know, hey, you're kind of grimy. Like the way you did Angel, like we can't really trust you. You know what I mean? And it all comes back to people. And see, I'm telling you, I wish I'd have known you. Like I wish it was reversed. I would have went to go work for you. You're the kind of person I wanted to work for when I was a young barber.
Yeah,
that's.
I appreciate that.
The reason I left the shop I was at was because there was no structure, there was no vision, there was no plan for growth. Like I was totally fine with I want to help a place. I just want to know I make an impact. That what I do matters, and I'm a part of this. Yeah. But as you know, in most shops, you get your clientele, you build your brand. You're busy, you're in a ceiling. And you go talk to the owner, like, hey, can we make these changes? I think it'll make the shop better. It's working for me. Oh, no. Yeah. All right, can I do booth rent? No, you're on commission. Or can I do something different? No, this is it. You've reached the ceiling. I'm like, that's the last thing I want to hear. Yeah. You forced me out of here. I wasn't even thinking of opening my own shop. Now you forced my hand. Like, I have to go do that now. That's the only way I can feel fulfilled. And I was a very apprehensive person. Like, coming from, some of my upbringing and stuff, I felt like, that's not very humble to start your own business. You're too proud and ambitious. And I had to get a lot of help from some of my mentors to be like, no, that's a great idea. You should. And light bulb clicked. And I felt like put it this way. I never wanted to own a business because most of the owners I knew were the typical tyrants. They're exploiting their people. And I always knew, like, I'm too nice to be a business owner. I can't do it. And then I did a lot of research. Actually, the great business owners, they care.
Yeah.
They really care, and they sacrifice, and they make the change. They make the necessary sacrifices. They have a vision. They stick to it, and they make the hard decisions that you have to make when you're in that captain's chair. And yeah, you know, I admire what you did. I know things are gonna work out really good for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Yeah, and I understood it was part of the process. You know, now looking back, you know, I like you said, I recognize a lot of things that I did wrong. But as a new owner, I'm figuring it out. You know what I mean? All I needed was just time. Needed some patience, and everything was gonna work out. So, you know, the plan was for eventually all of them to be making and charging what I'm charging. You know, that was the vision. You know, that way everybody could eat. You know, everybody would be comfortable.
Exactly.
You know,
nice. Yeah, that's good. You've done a lot of good things. So what other opportunities has barbering opened up for you? You know, I know you've got a lot going on. You're very entrepreneurial minded and everything.
Yeah. So, you know, in going through the process of, you know, understanding how the barbershop business worked, it made me realize that you just have to follow these steps, and you could replicate another business, and you can start something else. You just have to go through the same process. And so it made starting a business more feasible in my mind, where it's like, okay, I don't, you know, I'm not just
you know the process.
With just one. I can open up several as long as it fits within my lifestyle, and it works with everything else that I'm doing. And as long as I'm able to do that, I can start multiple things. And so I started a photo booth business a couple of years ago, the Snaps photo booth.
Nice.
And so, you know, I advertised that for you know, parties, events, you know, grand openings, weddings.
Nice.
You know, birthday parties, baby showers, you know, all kinds of stuff. And so that becomes a really good marketing opportunity for me, for my barbershop, you know.
Right, you go to a wedding, like, hey, you all need haircuts?
Yeah. So it just puts me in an environment where I can talk to several people and expand not just that business, but my other businesses as well. And so, you know, one of the other things that I started working on, one of my most recent projects is the product line that I've been working on for my shop.
Which, same thing, it works. It makes sense.
Yeah. And it flows, you know, because at the end of the day, they're products that I use on my customers every day. And so eventually got to the point where I realized, you know, it just made more sense for me to create my own line of products to meet the standard that I have for myself. And I knew that, you know, it would benefit my customers as well. You know, I didn't want to have products that I'd use on my clients that in the long run might damage their health in one form or another. So I wanted to create an all-natural product line.
I think a lot of people are becoming more conscious of that. Yeah. And I know I, for one, have a totally different perspective about all that than I did when I was younger and ignorant. And, you know, I just took whatever they gave me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's one of my most recent projects, and that's why I decided to bring you a little gift set.
I got the private label stuff right here.
This is the first actual complete set that I've ever put together.
Hey,
so,
I'm honored.
You know, I figured I bring you a little something as a token of appreciation for having me on. You know,
I appreciate it, and I got something coming for you too.
Oh, absolutely.
Nice. Hey, well, it's been good. We definitely got to do this again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Angel.
Right. Thank you, Rick.
Don't forget to check him out at the Vault Barber Shop in Ontario, California. Take care.
Thank you.